Stress is not a weakness. It is a biological system so ancient, so carefully designed, that it has helped every version of your ancestors survive long enough to become you. The stress response is mediated by two interconnected systems: the sympathetic nervous system, which triggers the immediate fight or flight cascade, and the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, a chain of communication between your brain and your adrenal glands that produces cortisol, the primary stress hormone. When you encounter something threatening, real or perceived, both systems fire almost simultaneously. Your heart rate rises, your breathing shallows, your muscles tighten with readiness. Every non-essential function is paused, because the body is doing something deeply intelligent, preparing you to survive. Tonight, we will understand why it sometimes forgets when the danger has passed, and what science now knows about helping it remember. The hypothalamus is the brain region that begins the stress cascade, roughly the size of a small almond. It sits deep at the center of your brain and monitors information from almost everywhere: your senses, your memory, your emotional centers, and the state of your body. When it perceives a threat, it releases a signaling molecule called corticotropin-releasing hormone. This travels to the pituitary gland, just below the hypothalamus, which then releases another messenger into the bloodstream. That messenger travels all the way to the adrenal glands, two small triangular organs sitting on top of your kidneys, which release cortisol into the body within minutes. This entire chain of events can unfold before you have consciously registered what frightened you. The body acts faster than thought. That is how urgently it wants to keep you safe. Cortisol does not just respond to physical danger. It responds to anything the brain interprets as a threat, a difficult conversation replayed in memory, a deadline not yet met, an unanswered message sitting in the dark of your phone. From the perspective of your hypothalamus, the emotional weight of an unresolved problem can trigger the same cascade as a physical threat. This is one of the most important things sleep science has revealed in recent years. The modern nervous system is not calibrated for the complexity of modern life. It evolved to respond to immediate, concrete threats that ended. Today's stressors often do not end. They linger, accumulate, and return nightly, keeping the cortisol system partially activated even as the rest of the body longs for rest. Here is the relationship between cortisol and sleep. In its simplest form, they oppose each other. Cortisol promotes wakefulness. It elevates blood pressure, increases alertness, speeds up thinking, and signals the body that action may be required. Sleep, by contrast, requires the nervous system to release all urgency, to lower arousal, to move through cycles of deep stillness. Research published through the National Institutes of Health has consistently shown that deep, slow-wave sleep actively suppresses the HPA axis, meaning that when you are sleeping well, your stress hormone production drops. The reverse is equally true. When cortisol remains elevated at night, it actively interferes with the brain's ability to enter deep sleep. Stress and sleep pull the nervous system in opposite directions. Understanding this is the beginning of finding your way back to rest. Cortisol follows a natural daily rhythm. Under normal conditions, it begins rising in the early hours of morning, reaching its peak shortly after you wake. This morning surge is the body's way of preparing you to face the day, increasing energy, sharpening focus, readying the immune system for the demands of activity. Throughout the day, cortisol gradually declines. By evening, levels are low, allowing melatonin to rise and the body to begin its transition towards sleep. This is the rhythm your nervous system was designed to follow. When stress is chronic, this rhythm is disrupted. Cortisol remains elevated later into the evening than it should, preventing melatonin from rising effectively, delaying sleep onset, and reducing the depth of sleep that follows. Research from the University of Bristol, published in 2025 and involving over 200 participants with continuous tissue monitoring, clarified that the cortisol rise we experience near waking is the tail end of this natural daily rhythm. Not a separate awakening response, as had long been believed. The body's chemistry is more continuous and more coordinated than we once thought. Chronic stress creates a self-reinforcing cycle that sleep science now describes as one of the most difficult biological loops to break. When stress elevates cortisol, sleep quality declines. When sleep quality declines, cortisol regulation becomes impaired, making the body more reactive to stress the following day. Each night of poor sleep makes the next stressor feel larger. Each stressor makes the next night's sleep shallower. A comprehensive review, published in late 2025, described this as one of the central mechanisms linking stress and psychological vulnerability, not simply one causing the other, but each continuously feeding into the other. Recognizing this cycle does not trap you inside it. It shows you where the entry point for change actually is. Tonight, you have already found it. The amygdala is your brain's primary emotional alarm center. Two small, almond-shaped clusters of neurons buried deep in the temporal lobes, one on each side. The amygdala monitors incoming information for signs of emotional significance, particularly threat. When the amygdala detects something that resembles past danger, it activates instantly, before the thinking parts of your brain have had time to evaluate the situation. This is by design. Speed was survival. But the amygdala does not distinguish well between remembered danger and present danger. It does not know that the meeting you are replaying is already over. It responds to vivid emotional memory, as though the threat is current. This is why nighttime thoughts can carry such urgency. The brain's alarm system does not power down simply because you have closed your eyes. The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain responsible for regulating the amygdala, located behind the forehead. It is the seat of reasoning, perspective-taking, and emotional modulation. When the prefrontal cortex is functioning well, it sends calming signals to the amygdala, contextualizing threats, placing them in time, distinguishing between what is happening now and what happened before. Stress and sleep deprivation significantly reduce prefrontal cortex activity. Research using functional brain imaging has shown that after poor sleep, the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala weakens, leaving emotional responses less regulated and stress response is more intense. This is why everything feels more overwhelming after a bad night of sleep. The brain's governor goes offline when it most needs to be present. Deep rest is not optional for emotional regulation. It is the mechanism by which emotional regulation is restored. The body keeps a physical record of stress. Muscles that have been held tense through a demanding day remain partially contracted long after the day is over. The jaw that clenched during a difficult conversation holds that tension into the night. The shoulders that rose toward the ears during a stressful moment carry that elevation into bed. This is not imagination. It is the nervous system's way of staying ready. The body remaining in a low level of physical preparation, even as you attempt to rest. Research on somatic awareness, the conscious attention to physical sensation, has consistently found that simply noticing and naming these sensations, recognizing the jaw, the shoulders, the weight behind the eyes, that begins to release them. Attention itself is a form of permission. When the body feels witnessed, it begins to let go. So yes, this is the first signal the science is giving us tonight. The reason stress and sleep conflict so completely is not a mystery or a malfunction. It is the intersection of two ancient systems doing exactly what they were designed to do. The stress system is trying to keep you alert and ready. The sleep system is trying to restore you. What science now understands, and what these next 100 facts will explore, is that sleep is not the absence of the stress response. Sleep is the most sophisticated stress processing system the human brain has ever developed. Lying here tonight, breathing slowly, you are not avoiding your stress. You are beginning to do something far more powerful. Norepinephrine is the other primary neurochemical involved in the stress response twirls. Released by the locus coeruleus, a small cluster of neurons in the brainstem, norepinephrine promotes wakefulness, alertness, and arousal. During the day, healthy levels of norepinephrine sharpen attention and support cognitive performance. At night, the locus coeruleus naturally quiets, allowing norepinephrine levels to fall and the brain to transition into sleep. Chronic stress disrupts this quieting. Research, published in early 2025, identified that norepinephrine also plays a beautiful role in brain cleansing during sleep. Slow oscillations of this chemical, synchronized with changes in cerebral blood flow, appear to drive the clearance of waste products from the brain through what is called the glymphatic system. The brain's stress chemicals, when properly regulated, become instruments of its own restoration. The glymphatic system is one of the most remarkable discoveries of recent neuroscience. First described in 2012, it is a fluid transport network that uses the spaces surrounding blood vessels in the brain as channels through which cerebrospinal fluid can flow, washing through brain tissue and carrying away metabolic waste, toxic proteins, and cellular debris accumulated during waking activity. This process occurs primarily during deep sleep. Research published in Nature Communications in early 2026, involving 39 human participants in a randomized crossover study, confirmed directly that one night of sleep deprivation measurably reduced the clearance of biological markers associated with neurodegeneration. Sleep is not passive rest. It is active cleansing. Every night, when you sleep deeply, your brain washes itself. Stress impairs the glymphatic system. Research has consistently found that chronic stress disrupts the brain's fluid clearance processes, allowing metabolic waste to accumulate in neural tissue over time. The cells most responsible for managing this clearance, astrocytes and microglia, are directly affected by sustained stress hormones. A peer-reviewed study published in May 2025 described how chronic stress induces changes in these glial cells, impairing their ability to regulate the channels through which cerebrospinal fluid flows. This is not a distant or abstract concern. It is cumulative and quiet, occurring night after night in a brain that never fully reaches the depth of rest it needs. Tonight, each moment you rest more deeply is one more moment your brain has to complete what it could not finish last night. Sleep is organized into cycles, and not all sleep is equally restorative for a stressed nervous system. A typical sleep cycle lasts approximately 90 minutes and includes several stages: light sleep, deep slow-wave sleep, and REM sleep. Deep slow-wave sleep, sometimes called N3, is the stage most directly associated with physical restoration, immune strengthening, and HPA, axis suppression. During slow-wave sleep, the brain produces large, slow electrical waves across the cortex. Growth hormone is released, cortisol drops to its daily minimum, muscles repair, memory consolidates. REM sleep, which occurs more prominently in the second half of the night, is associated with emotional processing and stress integration. Both stages are disrupted by elevated cortisol. A stressed nervous system tends to produce more fragmented sleep, with more time in lighter stages and less time in the deeper restorative cycles where the real work of recovery happens. REM sleep plays a specific role in processing emotional memory that has changed how researchers understand the relationship between stress and dreaming. During REM sleep, the brain replays emotionally significant experiences, but does so in a neurochemical environment notably different from waking. Norepinephrine, the stress-linked arousal chemical, is almost entirely absent during REM sleep. This means emotional memories are being reprocessed in a state free from the neurochemical signature of threat. Research from Frontiers in Psychiatry in late 2025 described the neural circuits involved in this emotional processing, noting that REM sleep appears to allow the brain to extract meaning from difficult experiences without fully reactivating the fear associated with them. REM sleep, in this understanding, is not where you relive your stress. It is where your brain quietly files it, strips the alarm away, and integrates what remains. People with insomnia consistently show elevated cortisol levels across the full 24-hour day, not just at night. A systematic review examining cortisol levels in individuals with insomnia compared to healthy sleepers found that chronic insomnia is associated with a state of round-the-clock hyperarousal at the hormonal level. This is not simply a sleep problem. It is a nervous system regulation problem in which the body's chemistry has become stuck in a partial stress state. The good news embedded in this finding is significant interventions that reduce daytime cortisol, including slow breathing, gentle movement, brief periods of quiet, and even the act of lying down with low stimulation before bed, have been shown to reduce the physiological conditions that make sleep difficult before sleep has even begun. The autonomic nervous system has two primary divisions that exist in a constant, dynamic balance. The sympathetic nervous system governs the stress and arousal responses. The parasympathetic nervous system governs rest, digestion, and recovery. These two systems are not simply on-off switches. They are more like the two sides of a conversation the body is always having with itself. Heart rate variability. The variation in the interval between heartbeats is one of the most reliable measures of how well this conversation is being conducted. High heart rate variability generally indicates a nervous system that can move fluidly between states. Low heart rate variability, associated with chronic stress, suggests a nervous system that has become rigid. Sleep significantly restores heart rate variability. Each night of genuinely restorative sleep is a small recalibration of the balance your nervous system is searching for. The vagus nerve is the primary structural highway of the parasympathetic nervous system, running from the brainstem through the neck, chest, and into the abdomen. It communicates with the heart, lungs, and digestive organs, coordinating the body's rest and digest responses. When vagal tone, the resting activity of the vagus nerve, is high, the body moves more efficiently into states of calm. When vagal tone is low, often due to chronic stress, the nervous system is less able to downregulate itself after activation. Slow, deep breathing with an extended exhale is the most well-researched and accessible way to stimulate the vagus nerve non-invasively. Research published in 2025 confirms that even a single session of slow diaphragmatic breathing at approximately 6 breaths per minute produces measurable increases in parasympathetic activity. The exhale is where the calming happens. The body knows this. It has always known this. Nighttime wakefulness produces a particular quality of thought that is different from daytime thinking, in ways neuroscience is only beginning to map. A theoretical framework, sometimes called mind after midnight, proposes that the brain in the second half of the night enters a distinct cognitive state in which negative appraisals, risk perception, and emotional reactivity are heightened. Stanford researchers studying the intersection of sleep and mental health describe this as a shift in decision-making and threat assessment that may partly explain the particular darkness that 3 a.m. thoughts can carry. You are not thinking more clearly at that hour. You are thinking with a brain whose regulatory systems have been partially offline for hours. In a neurochemical environment, different from any other time of day, the thoughts you have in the night are real, but they are not the whole truth. The body temperature cycle is intimately connected to both stress and sleep. Core body temperature follows a daily rhythm, rising slightly in the late afternoon and early evening, then dropping sharply as sleep approaches. This drop in core temperature is actually a trigger for sleep onset. It signals to the brain that the waking period is ending. Stress disrupts this rhythm. Elevated cortisol can maintain a slightly higher core temperature into the evening. delaying the temperature drop, and thus delaying the signal for sleep. This is why a warm bath or shower taken about 90 minutes before bed can help sleep arrive more easily. Not because warmth itself is sedating, but because the subsequent loss of heat from the body's surface after leaving warm water accelerates the natural pre-sleep temperature drop, sending an earlier and clearer signal to the brain that it is time to rest. The suprachiasmatic nucleus is your brain's master clock, a cluster of roughly 20,000 neurons sitting just above the point where the optic nerves from both eyes cross. It receives light information directly from the retina and uses it to synchronize all of the body's rhythms to the 24-hour cycle of day and night. Cortisol rhythm, melatonin release, body temperature, is hunger, and alertness are all coordinated by this small but remarkably precise structure. Chronic stress disrupts the signaling reaching the suprachiasmatic nucleus, creating a kind of internal misalignment in which the body's rhythms fall out of step with each other. The circadian clock does not stop during stress, but it shifts and stutters, producing the familiar experience of exhaustion at the wrong times and wakefulness precisely when you want to sleep. Melatonin is not a sleeping pill. It is a timing signal, produced by the pineal gland in response to darkness detected by the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Melatonin does not itself create sleep. It tells the body that night has arrived and that the conditions for sleep are present. Chronic stress suppresses melatonin production through two overlapping mechanisms. Elevated cortisol directly interferes with the pineal gland's melatonin release, and chronic stress often causes behavioral changes, like late-night screen use and irregular sleep schedules that reduce darkness exposure. When melatonin production is consistently suppressed, the brain does not receive a clear nightly signal that rest is permitted. The body stays ready when it should be releasing. Understanding this distinction, melatonin as signal, not sedative, changes how we think about creating the conditions for sleep rather than forcing it. Psychological stress affects sleep differently depending on when it occurs in relation to the sleep period. Stress experienced earlier in the day, processed and discharged through movement, conversation, or even journaling, tends to have a smaller effect on that night's sleep than stress that is rehearsed and ruminated in the hours before bed. Sleep science distinguishes between what researchers call pre-sleep cognitive arousal, the tendency of the mind to engage in evaluative, rehearsal-based, or worry-focused thinking in the transition period before sleep, and the actual physiological stress response. Both disrupt sleep, but through somewhat different pathways. Pre-sleep cognitive arousal is the racing thoughts, the replaying of conversations, the anxious planning for tomorrow. It is particularly disruptive because it involves the brain's narrative systems, keeping language and memory active in the very moments when the brain needs to dissolve into the formless quality of early sleep. The insula is a brain region that has emerged in recent years as a key player in the relationship between stress and sleep. Buried within the folds of the cortex, the insula integrates signals from the body, heart rate, breathing, muscle tension, temperature, into a sense of the body's overall internal state. When stress is high, the insula's monitoring becomes more urgent, more amplified. The body signals itself more loudly. Each sensation is flagged and evaluated. This heightened awareness is one of the reasons that lying down, which should bring relaxation, sometimes produces the opposite, as the quieting of external stimulation leaves only the body's amplified internal signals. Practices that gently shift attention towards sensations of comfort rather than alarm, warmth, weight, slowness, help recalibrate this system toward rest. Here is where we pause for the first time tonight and let the science speak quietly. Stress is not chaos. It is a system, a precisely orchestrated chain of chemical and electrical events that evolved over millions of years to protect you. And sleep is not its opposite. Sleep is the system that was built alongside it. The recovery mode that allows the stress response to reset, to discharge what it accumulated, to prepare for a new day without the weight of the last one. You are carrying both systems within you right now. The one that kept you alert all day, and the one that is quietly waiting to restore you tonight. As we continue this journey together, notice that the science is not trying to eliminate stress. It is trying to show you where the door to rest has always been, and how to open it gently. Let's pause here and notice your body as you breathe out slowly. Appreciate each quiet process happening inside you right now. Your heart still beating, your lungs still breathing. Millions of cells continuing their work without any instruction from you. Your nervous system is not your enemy tonight. It has been doing exactly what it was built to do. Notice the gentle weight of your body, the places where it touches the surface beneath you, the warmth gathering slowly under the covers. You are a complete ecosystem, and right now, it is tending itself. Now we continue. Inflammation is one of the less visible but deeply significant ways that chronic stress affects the sleeping brain. When the stress response is repeatedly activated, inflammatory cytokines, signaling proteins that regulate immune activity, begin to accumulate in the bloodstream and, over time, in the brain itself. Two cytokines in particular, interleukin-1 beta and tumor necrosis factor alpha, have been identified as mediators of sleep disruption in the context of sustained stress. Research reviewed in a 2025 peer-reviewed study found that chronic neuroinflammation impairs the astrocytes and microglia responsible for regulating both sleep architecture and glymphatic clearance. Reducing inflammatory signals in the brain through consistent rest, gentle movement, and the calming practices science has identified is not simply beneficial for sleep. It is essential for maintaining the brain's own ability to clean and repair itself through the night. Physical exercise remains one of the most robust interventions for reducing the biological markers of stress and improving sleep quality. Research consistently finds that moderate aerobic exercise reduces cortisol reactivity over time, enhances the depth of slow-wave sleep, and increases heart rate variability. The mechanism is not simple. Exercise itself temporarily activates the stress response, but the recovery period that follows, if the exercise is moderate and completed several hours before sleep, produces a rebound of parasympathetic activity that supports deeper rest that night. The timing matters. Vigorous exercise immediately before sleep can delay sleep onset by maintaining elevated core temperature and norepinephrine. But gentle movement in the late afternoon or evening, A walk, stretching, or slow yoga appears to support the transition to rest rather than impeding it. The phenomenon of sleep inertia is relevant to anyone who wakes during the night, feeling that their stress is larger and more urgent than it was the day before. Sleep inertia is the state of cognitive impairment that immediately follows waking from deep sleep. In this state, prefrontal cortex activity is temporarily reduced, emotional regulation is compromised, and threat appraisal is heightened. For someone already carrying significant stress, waking at 3 a.m. and attempting to evaluate problems from within sleep inertia produces a distorted picture. The problems are real. The magnitude is not. Knowing this, truly understanding that the brain in the middle of the night is not running at full capacity, can create a useful distance from the thoughts that feel most overwhelming in those quiet hours. Slow-wave sleep is when the brain does something that was only recently understood in its full significance. It generates large, slow, synchronized electrical oscillations, during which neurons across the cortex fire in coordinated patterns. Memory consolidation. The process of transferring experiences from short-term working memory into long-term storage occurs primarily during this phase. But more than that, the emotional tagging of memories is also modulated during slow-wave sleep. Memories that arrive weighted with anxiety can sometimes be processed into long-term storage with a lighter emotional charge. Sleep does not erase difficult experiences, but it may, under the right conditions, convert them from raw and urgent into something more integrated and quieter. This is one reason that emotional events that feel unbearable the night they occur sometimes feel different. Not resolved, but softened. After even a single night of good sleep, breathing is the only autonomic function you can consciously control. The heartbeat, digestion, the release of hormones. None of these respond directly to your will, but breathing does. And because breathing is directly coupled to the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system, your breath is literally a direct interface between your conscious mind and your body's stress response. Research published in 2025 examining slow breathing practices found that sessions as brief as 2 to 5 minutes at approximately 6 breaths per minute produced significant increases in parasympathetic nervous system activity, measurable through heart rate variability. An extended exhale, longer than the inhale, is particularly effective, as it is the exhale phase specifically that activates the calming branch of the vagus nerve. Breathing is the most immediate stress intervention the human body has ever evolved. And you are doing it right now. Social connection and the sense of being truly heard are neurobiologically significant buffers against the sleep-disrupting effects of stress. When we experience genuine social safety, the felt sense that someone else understands what we are carrying, the nervous system releases oxytocin, a neuropeptide that directly reduces cortisol production and promotes parasympathetic tone. Research on social baseline theory proposes that the nervous system evolved to outsource threat assessment to the social group, meaning that isolation is itself a form of physiological stress that elevates cortisol and disrupts sleep. This does not mean you need to have someone in the room to sleep well, but it helps explain why simply feeling less alone, through connection, through ritual, through even the quiet companionship of a familiar voice guiding you into rest, can have measurable biological effects on the quality of the sleep that follows. The prefrontal cortex, when it is functioning well, can exert what researchers call top-down regulation of the amygdala. This means the thinking, reasoning, contextualizing part of the brain can actively dampen the alarm-generating part. Slow, deliberate breathing has been shown through neuroimaging research to enhance this connection, specifically improving the links between the medial prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. This is the biological basis for the observation that breathing slowly, even briefly, in a moment of stress, genuinely changes your emotional state, not simply through distraction, but through a real-time shift in how the brain's alarm center is being regulated. The breath reaches the brain's deepest fear center, gently, through a chain of nerves that evolution built for exactly this purpose. The gut-brain axis is increasingly recognized as a significant pathway through which chronic stress disrupts sleep. The gut contains more than 100 million neurons, a network so extensive it is sometimes called the second brain. It produces approximately 90% of the body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter most associated with mood stability and the precursor to melatonin. Chronic stress alters gut microbiome composition, reduces serotonin production in the gut, and creates inflammation signals that travel via the vagus nerve directly to the brain. This communication means that gut health and sleep health are deeply linked. Research suggests that dietary patterns supporting gut microbiome diversity, including fermented foods, fiber-rich plants, and reduced processed sugar, may support more stable serotonin production and, through this pathway, more consistent sleep quality over time. A practice called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, is currently considered the most well-supported approach for stress-related sleep difficulties, showing more lasting results than sleep medication over time. According to multiple clinical studies, unlike medication, which alters neurochemistry directly, CBT works by gently reshaping the thought patterns, behavioral habits, and physiological associations that keep insomnia alive long after the original stressor has passed. One of its central insights is that insomnia is often maintained by secondary worry about insomnia itself. The arousal generated by lying in bed, anticipating a poor night. Research confirmed by Stanford sleep scientists and referenced in a 2025 report found that interventions improving sleep also reliably reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety, with larger improvements in sleep correlating to larger improvements in mental health overall. The concept of allostatic load describes what happens to the body when the stress response is repeatedly activated without sufficient recovery. The term allostasis refers to the body's ability to maintain stability through change, to adapt successfully to shifting conditions. Allostatic load is the accumulated biological cost of that adaptation over time. It is measured in disrupted cortisol rhythms, increased inflammatory markers, reduced immune efficiency, and changes in stress-relevant brain regions. The discovery that the brain retains a degree of plasticity throughout life, that neural structure and function can continue to reorganize in response to new experience, is one of the most meaningful findings in modern neuroscience. Rest, and the restoration it enables, is part of how that plasticity is maintained. The perception of control is itself a biological stress modulator. Research consistently finds that when people feel they have some control over a stressor, even if that control is limited, their cortisol response is lower and their sleep disruption less severe than when they feel the same stressor is entirely outside their control. This is not a matter of optimism or positive thinking. It is a feature of the nervous system's appraisal process. The hypothalamus responds to perceived helplessness with greater intensity than to an equivalent threat where agency is felt. This is one reason that active, preparatory behaviors, writing tomorrow's concerns down before bed, identifying one small thing to address in the morning, can have a genuine physiological effect on the stress response. The act of externalizing a worry and assigning it to tomorrow shifts the brain's relationship to the problem from one of helplessness to one of deferred resolution. The nervous system notices the difference. Temperature regulation and sleep quality are so closely linked that researchers have begun describing them as nearly inseparable in the context of stress management. The sleep onset process involves a redistribution of heat from the body's core to its periphery. The hands and feet become warmer as the core cools. This peripheral warming is a sign that the body is successfully moving heat outward, which accelerates the core temperature drop needed for sleep. Stress, by maintaining a degree of sympathetic activation, can impair this peripheral blood flow, keeping hands and feet cooler and delaying the temperature redistribution that signals sleep. This is why people under stress sometimes notice that their hands and feet feel cold even when they are lying still. The solution is not more warmth from outside, but the restoration of circulation from within. Through the calming of the nervous system itself. Adenosine is the chemical that creates what scientists call sleep pressure, the biological drive for sleep that builds throughout the day. It is a metabolic byproduct of neural activity. The more your neurons fire during waking hours, the more adenosine accumulates. By evening, sufficient adenosine has built up to create genuine sleepiness. During sleep, adenosine is cleared from the brain, and the pressure resets. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors, which is why it masks tiredness without eliminating it. The adenosine continues to accumulate behind the blockade. Stress does not directly suppress adenosine, but it does suppress the brain's ability to respond to it. A nervous system in high arousal can resist the pull of even substantial adenosine buildup, maintaining wakefulness, not because sleep pressure is absent, but because the arousal system is overriding it. Sleep pressure is always there. Stress simply refuses to let you feel it. Nature exposure has emerged as one of the more meaningful environmental interventions for stress-induced sleep disruption. Research on what Japanese scientists call Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, or the practice of slow, mindful time in natural settings, has found consistent reductions in salivary cortisol, blood pressure, heart rate, and sympathetic nervous system activity following even brief exposures of 40 minutes to 2 hours. The mechanisms appear to involve several overlapping pathways, reduced sensory complexity compared to urban environments, exposure to airborne compounds released by trees, and the quality of soft attention that natural environments elicit, you do not need to be in a forest tonight. But the principle it embodies, gentle, non-demanding sensory experience that requires nothing of you, is exactly what a stressed nervous system responds to. Here is where the evidence pauses. Midway through our exploration, science has been mapping the architecture of stress for decades. And what it keeps returning to is a finding that is both clinical and quietly profound. The human nervous system was not built to hold stress indefinitely. It was built to discharge it. Every system in the body, the cortisol cascade, the inflammatory response, the sympathetic arousal, has its own completion mechanism, its own way of cycling through and releasing. The chronic stress we experience today often prevents completion. The body activates but never fully resolves. Tonight, this moment is a completion. Not everything resolves at once, but something dissolves each time. The body is finally allowed to rest. You are allowing it now. You are still here, still breathing, still listening, still somewhere between thinking and resting. That's exactly right. Just notice where your body is, the weight of it, the warmth of it. Notice that without any effort at all, it is already softening. We are exploring the science of what your nervous system has always known how to do. Together, gently, let's continue. The relationship between stress and memory has a beautiful mirror in the relationship between sleep and memory. Stress can fragment memory formation, making it harder to retain new information clearly, while also making fear-associated memories more vivid. Sleep does something that partially reverses this. During the nightly process of memory consolidation, emotional memories are selectively processed, their content often preserved, but their emotional intensity reduced. Research has described this as the brain storing the narrative while quieting the alarm. This means that sleep, particularly REM sleep, may function as a form of natural integration for the everyday stress we carry, not erasing, but contextualizing, placing difficult experiences in a larger timeline, making them smaller against a longer backdrop. The stress response is more nuanced than a simple on-off switch. Alongside fight and flight, the nervous system can sometimes move into a quieter kind of stillness. Not the peaceful stillness of rest, but a muted, heavy quality, associated with feelings of numbness and disconnection. Some researchers describe this as a protective withdrawal the body makes when a situation feels truly overwhelming and inescapable. Whether this involves specific, distinct nerve pathways, as some theories propose, is still being explored by science. What is clear is that this heavy stillness is different from genuine rest. The body is not releasing, it is waiting, and the path back to true rest begins with the felt sense of safety. However small, true rest is not absence of movement. It is the active engagement of the parasympathetic system, the felt sense of safety and stillness. The body knows the difference even when the mind does not. Sleep deprivation alters the perception of pain. Studies have consistently found that even one night of poor sleep increases sensitivity to pain by reducing the activity of endogenous pain-modulating systems in the brain. For someone carrying chronic stress, which often includes both sleep disruption and heightened bodily tension, this means that physical discomfort itself becomes part of the stress load, further elevating cortisol and further disrupting subsequent sleep. The circle turns, but it turns the other way as well. Adequate sleep measurably reduces pain sensitivity, which reduces the physical burden of the next day's stress, which reduces the cortisol load entering the next night. Even a single night of improved rest shifts the baseline. The concept of sleep hygiene, while sometimes oversimplified, reflects something genuinely important about the conditions the stressed nervous system needs to transition into sleep. A consistent sleep schedule, meaning going to bed and waking at similar times even on weekends, helps stabilize the circadian clock and makes cortisol's natural evening decline more predictable. A cool bedroom, ideally around 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, supports the core temperature drop associated with sleep onset. Reduced blue light exposure in the 2 hours before bed allows melatonin production to begin unimpeded. These are not arbitrary rules. They are environmental translations of what the stress physiology has been telling us all evening. The nervous system needs clear signals that the threat period has ended and the rest period has begun. Mindfulness meditation has one of the most robust bodies of research supporting its effects on stress-related sleep disruption of any non-pharmacological intervention. A review of studies examining mindfulness-based stress reduction found consistent reductions in cortisol, improvements in heart rate variability, and lengthening of slow-wave sleep in participants with stress-related insomnia. The mechanism appears to involve several pathways: simultaneously reduced pre-sleep cognitive arousal, improved regulation of the amygdala, enhanced vagal tone, and a shift in the brain's relationship to the arising and passing of thoughts. Observing them without automatically engaging or amplifying them, mindfulness does not teach you to stop having thoughts. It teaches the brain that a thought's arrival does not require a response. That distinction is, quietly, everything. Gratitude has a measurable biological effect on sleep quality. Research examining gratitude practices before bed has found that participants who spent several minutes writing or reflecting on things they appreciated that day fell asleep faster, slept longer, and reported higher sleep quality than control groups. The proposed mechanisms include reduced pre-sleep cognitive arousal, increased parasympathetic tone through positive emotional engagement, and a shift in attentional bias away from threat-relevant information. From a neuroscience perspective, gratitude appears to engage the medial prefrontal cortex and reduce activity in threat assessment centers, creating a gentle shift in the brain's evaluation of the current moment. It is not false reassurance. It is a deliberate redirect of the brain's attention toward the parts of the present moment that are, in fact, safe. Recent neuroscience has identified a brain pathway that converts emotional stress into sudden wakefulness during non-REM sleep with striking speed and specificity. Research published in December 2025 described a circuit involving neurons in the bed nucleus of the stria terminalis and the deep mesencephalic reticular area that, when activated by emotional signals, can shift the brain from deep sleep into full wakefulness almost instantly. This circuit appears to be the mechanism behind stress-related nighttime awakenings, the experience of being pulled out of sleep by what feels like a surge of anxiety or alarm without clear external cause. Understanding that this is a specific, identifiable neural pathway, not a general failure of the sleeping brain, points toward increasingly precise interventions for stress-related insomnia, including therapeutic approaches that target exactly these circuits. The human stress response is calibrated partly by early life experience. Research in developmental neuroscience has found that early exposure to manageable, moderate stress, the kind that is challenging but recoverable, actually builds resilience, enhancing the HPA axis's ability to self-regulate over time. By contrast, early exposure to prolonged, uncontrollable, or unpredictable stress can alter the sensitivity of the stress system in ways that persist into adulthood, lowering the threshold at which the HPA axis is activated and lengthening the time it takes to return to baseline after a stressor. This is not destiny. The brain's capacity to reorganize its own structure and function in response to new experience means that the stress response can be recalibrated throughout life. Consistent practices of rest, safety, and nervous system regulation are literally forms of learning. They teach the body what calm feels like, repeatedly, until calm becomes the default. The default mode network is a set of brain regions that become most active during rest, when the mind is not focused on an external task. Under ordinary conditions, this network supports reflection, self-referential thought, imagination, and the quiet integration of experience. It is active during mind-wandering, during daydreaming, and in the early transitions into sleep. Chronic stress disrupts the default mode network's normal pattern of activity, often replacing its gentle, exploratory quality with ruminative loops, repetitive, self-referential, negatively valenced thought that cycles without resolution. This rumination keeps the nervous system partially aroused, even in moments that should produce rest. Practices that gently redirect attention to breath, to body sensation, to the quiet facts of the present moment interrupt this ruminative pattern, not by suppressing thought, but by offering the wandering mind something neutral and steady to rest against. We are now halfway through this quiet journey together. 50 facts about stress and sleep. 50 small pieces of a picture that, taken together, to begin to show something simple and profound beneath all the complexity. Stress is information. It enters the body with urgency and purpose. Sleep is the system built to receive it, to process it, to extract what is useful and dissolve what is not. The bridge between them is not force. It is not fighting the cortisol, not demanding the amygdala be quiet, not commanding the racing thoughts to stop. The bridge is understanding, and understanding, tonight, begins to feel like permission. The nervous system you are living in right now, the one that carried you through today, the one that is listening to these words, it has always known how to rest. It is waiting for you to remember that it does. Every memory you will revisit tomorrow, the mind is gently rewriting it right now, in this very moment, quietly, your brain is consolidating today, deciding what to keep, how to file it, what emotional weight to carry forward. You don't need to direct this process. It has been happening since the first night of your life. Right now, your mind is doing exactly the kind of work that allows tomorrow to feel a little lighter than today. Let it work. Let it rest. These are the same thing. Now we continue. The body has a remarkable capacity for what researchers call allostatic recovery, the process by which systems disrupted by chronic stress return toward their baseline when sufficient rest and safety are provided. This recovery is not linear, and it does not happen overnight. But the body's movement toward equilibrium, given the right conditions, is consistent and measurable. Cortisol rhythms that have been disrupted by weeks of sustained stress begin to normalize within days of improved sleep. Heart rate variability, suppressed by chronic activation, rebounds measurably after several consecutive nights of uninterrupted rest. The nervous system wants to return to balance. It is searching for it continuously. Tonight is part of that search. Journaling before bed has been studied as a specific intervention for pre-sleep cognitive arousal. The racing thoughts and unresolved mental activity that impede sleep onset in stressed individuals. Research found that people who spent 5 minutes writing a specific to-do list, not general worries, but concrete tasks planned for the next day, fell asleep significantly faster than those who wrote about completed activities. The proposed mechanism is that written externalization of unresolved tasks offloads them from working memory, reducing the cognitive arousal associated with holding them in mind. The brain appears to release attention from something once it believes the information has been stored elsewhere. Writing your tomorrow down tells the mind it can stop rehearsing. There is a record. It is safe to let go. The relaxation response, a term introduced by cardiologist Herbert Benson in the 1970s, describes a coordinated physiological state that is the direct counterpart to the stress response, where the stress response increases heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, and cortisol. The relaxation response decreases all of these while increasing peripheral blood flow, reducing muscle tension, and shifting brain activity towards slower wave patterns. Benson's original research demonstrated that a simple, consistent practice, slow, intentional breathing paired with a neutral mental focus, could reliably produce this state in most people. Decades of subsequent research have confirmed and expanded this finding. The body's capacity for profound relaxation is not a special skill. It is a built-in feature that, like any other feature of the human system, responds to practice. Sleep itself is one of the most meaningful regulators of the immune system. Deep, slow-wave sleep promotes the release of cytokines that coordinate immune surveillance and repair. T cells, a critical class of immune cells, increase their activity during sleep, improving the body's ability to recognize and respond to threats. Chronic stress suppresses this immune enhancement by maintaining a cortisol environment that is mildly immunosuppressive, reducing the effectiveness of the sleep-dependent immune processes. This is why people under sustained stress are more susceptible to illness. Not because stress causes illness directly, but because it reduces the nightly immune maintenance that keeps the body's defenses robust. Rastes immunitaire. Every night of deep sleep is a calibration of the system that protects you. The concept of sleep as a social experience is an emerging area of research that challenges the assumption that sleep is fundamentally solitary. The physiological basis for social comfort during sleep appears to involve oxytocin, the social bonding neuropeptide, which reduces cortisol and promotes parasympathetic tone. More broadly, feeling socially safe, the sense that one is not alone in carrying the burdens of the day, is itself a biological sleep facilitator. This extends beyond physical proximity. The neurological feeling of being accompanied, of not carrying one's stress entirely alone, is something the nervous system registers and responds to. You are not alone in this night. Magnesium is perhaps the most studied mineral in the context of stress and sleep. It plays a role in regulating the HPA axis and supports the conversion of tryptophan into serotonin, a precursor of melatonin. Research estimates that a significant portion of adults in Western countries may have insufficient dietary magnesium, and some studies have found that improving magnesium levels supports sleep quality. Foods naturally high in magnesium include dark leafy greens, pumpkin seeds, almonds, black beans, and dark chocolate. The body's relationship with rest is nutritional as well as psychological. What you eat during the day affects how the night unfolds. The phenomenon of microsleeps is a sign that sleep pressure has accumulated beyond what the arousal system can fully counteract. Microsleeps are episodes of sleep lasting between 1 and 30 seconds, occurring in people who are awake and sometimes attempting to perform tasks, often unaware that they occurred. They are particularly common in people experiencing both high stress and sleep restriction. During a microsleep, the brain briefly disconnects from external input and transitions into sleep-like activity patterns. The existence of microsleeps is evidence that the brain's drive for sleep is stronger than any amount of willpower. The sleep system is always present, always pressing, always waiting for the moment the arousal threshold drops enough to let it through. The relationship between alcohol and sleep is one of the most misunderstood interactions in everyday stress management. Alcohol is commonly used as a sleep aid, and while it does reduce the time to fall asleep by sedating the nervous system, it profoundly disrupts sleep architecture. Alcohol suppresses REM sleep in the first half of the night and produces a rebound effect in the second half as it is metabolized. More frequent awakenings, lighter sleep, and elevated heart rate. The stress-relevant consequence is that the emotional processing that REM sleep provides is disrupted on nights when alcohol is consumed. What feels like stress relief in the evening often produces more unprocessed stress the following day. The nervous system is not rested. It is numbed briefly, then disturbed. The anterior cingulate cortex sits at a junction between the brain's emotional and cognitive systems. It helps integrate the emotional signals from the amygdala with the rational appraisals from the prefrontal cortex, functioning as a kind of internal negotiator between feeling and thinking. During periods of chronic stress, the anterior cingulate becomes hyperactive, maintaining a constant low-level monitoring of potential threats. This hypervigilance is exhausting. It consumes significant metabolic resources and contributes to the particular quality of fatigue that accompanies sustained stress, not the physical fatigue of exertion, but the cognitive and emotional exhaustion of a system that has been on alert too long. Sleep, particularly slow-wave sleep, appears to reduce this hypervigilance by giving the anterior cingulate the opportunity to cycle down and process the accumulated signal load of the day without the urgency of waking consciousness. There is a moment in the transition from wakefulness into sleep that researchers call hypnagogia, the threshold state in which the brain is neither fully awake nor fully asleep. In this state, the brain's activity shifts from the fast, irregular waves of waking thought to slower, more synchronized rhythms. Imagery may arise, fragments of memory, abstract shapes, brief scenes, without the narrative logic of waking thought or the immersive depth of dreams. For people carrying significant stress, this threshold state can be interrupted by sudden intrusive thoughts or the return of anxiety. Recognizing hypnagogia for what it is, not a failure to sleep, but a sign that sleep is actively in progress, can reduce the secondary arousal that sometimes interrupts it. The descent is happening. The transition is real. You only need to allow it to continue. The sense of smell has a uniquely direct pathway to the brain's limbic system, the emotional and memory centers, bypassing the relay that other senses use. This makes olfactory experience one of the fastest sensory routes to emotional state change. Lavender, in particular, has been studied for its effects on the autonomic nervous system, with research finding reductions in heart rate and increases in parasympathetic activity following lavender aromatherapy in controlled settings. The effects are modest and not universal, but the mechanism, direct limbic activation through the olfactory bulb, is real and measurable. A consistent, calm scent associated with sleep can, through the process of conditioning, become a reliable signal to the nervous system that the sleep context has arrived. The body learns from its own history. Weighted blankets have become widely used as an aid for stress-related sleep disruption, and research has begun to clarify why. The pressure of a weighted blanket activates what is called the deep pressure stimulation system, a form of touch processing that promotes parasympathetic activity and reduces cortisol. Studies have found reductions in physiological arousal and self-reported anxiety in adults using weighted blankets, with effects most noticeable in individuals with high baseline anxiety. The mechanism resembles other forms of calming touch. The weight creates a diffuse, consistent sensory input that the nervous system interprets as containment and safety. It is, at its root, the sensory language of being held, and the nervous system has known that language since birth. The practice of progressive muscle relaxation, first developed by Edmund Jacobson in the 1920s, remains one of the most evidence-supported techniques for reducing physiological arousal before sleep. It involves the systematic tensing and releasing of muscle groups throughout the body: feet, legs, abdomen, chest, arms, shoulders, neck, and face, attending to the contrast between tension and release. The physiological effect is direct muscles that have been consciously tensed and then released, drop to a lower resting tension than they were at before the practice. The cognitive effect is equally significant. The deliberate shifting of attention to physical sensation interrupts ruminative thought and grounds awareness in the present body. For the stressed nervous system, progressive muscle relaxation provides both a physical and attentional reset, moving the experience of the body from a source of alarm signals to a source of deliberate, chosen, quiet. Dream content has been studied as a window into the nocturnal processing of stress. Research has consistently found that dreams following stressful periods contain more negative emotional content and more complex social scenarios than dreams in low-stress periods. This is not simply a repetition of daytime worry. It appears to be the brain's narrative system engaging with emotionally significant material from waking life, exploring variations, outcomes, and associations in the relatively unconstrained cognitive environment of sleep. Recurring stress dreams, versions of the same scenario returning night after night, may reflect ongoing processing of a persistent stressor. When stress finally resolves, these dreams typically shift and then fade. The dreaming brain is a problem solver that thinks in images rather than words. It is working on your behalf, even in the scenarios that feel most unsettling. We now understand something about the relationship between stress and sleep that would not have been visible even a decade ago. Sleep is not recovery from stress in the way that food is recovery from hunger, a separate corrective taken after the fact. Sleep is part of the stress response itself. It is the completion of a biological cycle that stress begins when the stress cycle cannot complete, when there is no discharge through movement, resolution, or rest. The system remains partly activated, carrying forward into the next waking period. The next night, accumulating. Every night of sleep is an attempt at completion, a chance to close what the day opened. You are in the middle of that closing right now. Light is the most powerful environmental regulator of the circadian clock, and the timing of light exposure has profound effects on nighttime cortisol and melatonin rhythms. Exposure to bright light in the morning hours signals the circadian clock to anchor the rhythm to waking, starting the cortisol rise and beginning the countdown toward the evening melatonin surge. Morning light. Even 10 to 30 minutes of outdoor light exposure before 9 a.m. has been shown in multiple studies to improve sleep quality, reduce sleep onset time in the evening, and stabilize the cortisol rhythm across the day. Evening light, by contrast, delays melatonin and keeps the stress-relevant arousal system activated later. The timing of light is the timing of cortisol. Managing one manages the other. The brain's capacity to predict is intimately connected to the experience of stress. A widely discussed model in contemporary neuroscience proposes that the brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. It constantly generates models of what to expect and updates those models based on incoming sensory data. Stress arises partly from situations where reality deviates from the brain's model in ways that haven't yet been accounted for. This is why uncertainty is one of the most potent stressors, not because the uncertain event is necessarily threatening, but because the brain cannot model it and therefore cannot prepare. Consiste routine. the same gentle sequence of actions before sleep, repeated night after night. Reduce this prediction gap at the end of the day. They tell the nervous system exactly what is coming next. And what is coming next is rest. The hippocampus, the brain region most associated with memory and spatial navigation, is one of the areas most sensitive to the effects of chronic stress. Research has shown that sustained high cortisol can suppress the formation of new neurons in the hippocampus, a process documented clearly in animal models and one for which growing evidence suggests a parallel in humans. Though the science is still being refined, brain imaging studies have found associations between prolonged stress and reduced hippocampal volume in chronically stressed individuals. And a hippocampus under strain becomes less effective at regulating the very response that is straining it, sending fewer inhibitory signals back to the hypothalamus, allowing the stress cycle to continue longer than it should. Sleep. By reducing cortisol and supporting the conditions the brain needs to maintain itself, gently interrupts this cycle. Sound has a documented effect on the sleeping brain that is deeper than simply masking noise. Certain sound frequencies, particularly slow, rhythmic, natural sounds like rain, running water, or ocean waves, appear to gently nudge the brain's own electrical rhythms towards slower, more sleep-consistent patterns. This is why ambient sound environments, used consistently, can become both conditioned sleep cues and direct neurological facilitators. The sleeping brain is not a closed system that simply waits out the night. It continues to process auditory information, integrating it into the ongoing architecture of the night's experience. The gentleness of what surrounds you as you sleep shapes the gentleness of what unfolds within it. Resilience, in the physiological sense, is not the absence of a stress response. It is the speed and completeness of recovery from one. Research on resilient individuals consistently finds not that they experience less cortisol release during stress, but that their cortisol returns to baseline more quickly after the stressor has passed. This recovery speed is partly influenced by genetics and early environment, but it is also trainable through consistent practices, regular slow breathing, consistent sleep, moderate exercise, and the experience of genuine social safety all measurably improve the recovery rate of the HPA axis. Resilience is not toughness. It is elasticity, the nervous system bending fully and returning, again and again, to its own quiet center. Napping has a nuanced relationship with nighttime sleep and stress. Brief naps of 20 to 30 minutes, taken in the early afternoon, can reduce cortisol, improve alertness, and restore some cognitive functions impaired by nighttime stress. A nap that extends into deep sleep or that is taken too late in the afternoon may, however, reduce the adenosine buildup that drives the evening sleep urge, making it harder to fall asleep at the intended bedtime. For people with stress-related insomnia, sleep specialists generally recommend restricting daytime sleep until nighttime sleep is stabilized, then incorporating strategic brief naps if needed. For people without significant insomnia, a consistent brief nap represents one of the simplest and most effective midday cortisol interventions available to the human body. The concept of sleep effort, the conscious, determined attempt to make oneself fall asleep, is one of the more counterintuitive findings in sleep science. Sleep cannot be achieved through direct effort in the way that a task can be completed through focused work. The brain states required for sleep onset are incompatible with the monitoring, evaluating, and effortful trying that constitute intentional behavior. Attempting to force sleep creates arousal, and arousal prevents sleep. This is sometimes called the sleep paradox. The most effective approach, confirmed by research, is often paradoxical intention, the decision to simply lie still and rest, without specifically trying to sleep, remaining open to sleep if it arrives, but not striving for it. When the pressure to sleep is removed, the sleep system often moves forward on its own. The body knows how to do this. It only needs permission. The transition from wakefulness to sleep involves a characteristic reduction in the body's reactivity to external stimuli. As the brain moves through the earlier stages of sleep, the threshold for sensory arousal rises. Sounds that would have been immediately noticed while awake are now processed at a lower level of attention. Threats are still monitored, but the bar for what constitutes a response-worthy event rises significantly. Chronic stress lowers this threshold, keeping the sleeping brain in a state of lighter, more reactive sleep, in which ordinary environmental sounds, minor physical sensations, and even internal thoughts more easily produce brief awakenings, reducing the overall arousal load before bed. Through the breathing, the quiet, the gradual dimming of stimulation raises the threshold and allows deeper sleep to hold. Acceptance, in the psychological sense, the willingness to acknowledge what is present without immediately trying to change it, appears to have a measurable effect on the nocturnal processing of stress. Research in acceptance-based therapies has found that people who approach their stress and their sleep disruption with greater acceptance and less self-judgment tend to have better sleep outcomes than those who struggle most, actively against their symptoms. This is not passivity or resignation. It is the opposite of the sleep-effort paradox. The same principle applied to the broader context of one's relationship to stress. The nervous system relaxes more completely when it is not also fighting itself, acknowledging that tonight may not be perfect, that sleep may come slowly, that some wakefulness may be part of tonight's experience, and being at peace with that is itself a profound biological intervention. The question we began with tonight: what happens when a nervous system built for danger tries to rest? Has an answer that science has been assembling piece by piece. The answer is something remarkable. The same brain that generates the stress response also contains, in its deepest architecture, everything needed to dissolve it. The HPA axis self-regulates when given the opportunity. The vagus nerve offers a direct line to calm. The glymphatic system clears what the day deposited. The amygdala settles when the prefrontal cortex is rested enough to hold it gently. The slow waves of deep sleep process what waking hours could not complete. Stress is not a malfunction. Sleep is not a luxury. Together, they are the oldest biological conversation the human nervous system has ever conducted. And tonight, right now, in this particular quiet, that conversation is continuing. You might be feeling heavy now. Beautifully so. Sleep doesn't come when you try to sleep. It comes when you stop trying. This is exactly that moment. Your breath is slowing without your instruction. Your thoughts are becoming softer at the edges. The urgency of the day is beginning to feel very far away. You don't need to hold on to any of it. Let go. Every night that the body finally rests, the glymphatic system completes a quiet act of restoration. Cerebrospinal fluid moves slowly through the spaces around blood vessels, carrying away what accumulated during the day's activity. The brain cleans itself. Sleep is the most ancient maintenance system the nervous system has ever built for itself. It was doing this long before any of us had words for what it was. The cortisol that rises in the early hours of morning, preparing you for the day, does so most gently when the night before was restful. A calm sleep allows the morning cortisol to follow its natural, measured arc, present enough to support energy and clarity, not so elevated as to begin the day already in a state of activation. This quiet chemical handoff, from the restorative night to the ready morning, is one of the most reliable signs of a nervous system in genuine balance. You are preparing for it right now. REM sleep, in its later cycles in the second half of the night, processes the most emotionally complex material from the day. Dreams in the early morning hours are the brain's most elaborate. This is when the mind works through social scenarios, relationship tensions, unresolved feelings, and it does this in a brain that has been, for hours, low in the chemicals of fear and alarm. The work is real. The integration is real. Something genuinely different happens to an experience after it has passed through a night of good sleep. A burden carried into bed does not always emerge with the same weight. The parasympathetic nervous system, now leading, is restored. Digestion resumes. Heart rate slows. Blood pressure eases. Immune cells circulate through tissue doing quiet work. The body turns its full attention inward, to repair, to maintenance, to the long, patient work of keeping you well. This is what the night is for. Not just for the mind, for every organ, every system, every cell. They are all waiting for this. Somewhere, in the first hour of deep sleep, growth hormone is released in its largest pulse of the day. Muscle tissue repairs. The body uses the stillness of sleep to build and rebuild itself at the cellular level. Rest is not absence of activity. It is a different kind of activity. Slower, deeper, invisible, unnecessary. The brain in deep sleep enters a state that, from the outside, resembles stillness, but is, from the inside, still remarkably organized. Slow synchronized waves move across the cortex in rhythmic sweeps. Memories are transferred, sorted, filed. Emotional significance is reweighted. The day's experience is integrated into the ongoing story. The brain is always composing about who you are and what your life contains. Sleep is not a pause in that story. It is where much of the writing happens. The body temperature at the center of you is now lower than it was this morning. A fraction of a degree. Acquiert signal. Sent and received. The circadian clock has dimmed its urgent chemical messaging. The cortisol that organized your day has retreated to its nightly minimum. The melatonin that called you here is still present, still gently holding the space of the night around you. These are things happening in your body right now. While you rest, while you listen, while the science quietly continues, the nervous system that carried you through today was doing the best it could with the information it had. It raised your cortisol when it sensed danger, real or remembered. It tightened your muscles against threats that may not have arrived. It kept you alert when all you wanted was to rest. This is not a flaw. This is care. The body trying to protect you. And now, having done its work, it is beginning to release that vigilance. Slowly, gently, fact by fact, breath by breath. The protection is becoming permission. Sleep researchers speak of homeostatic sleep pressure and circadian sleep drive as the two forces that together bring sleep about. The pressure has been building since you woke this morning. The slow accumulation of adenosine in the brain, the quiet mounting biological need for rest. The circadian drive is the timing signal from the circadian clock, aligned with the fall of darkness, confirming that this is the right time. Both forces are working in your favor right now. They have been all evening. They are stronger than any worry. They are older than any stress. They will bring you home. The mind at this hour begins to do something quiet. The internal narrator, the voice that comments and evaluates and reviews the day, grows softer. Thoughts arrive more slowly. Some arrive as images rather than words. The boundary between memory and imagination becomes less sharp. This is not confusion. This is the brain beginning its transition. The thinking networks quieting. The first faint current of sleep beginning to move through consciousness. You are not failing to sleep. You are sleeping. Already, around the edges, somewhere in the body, the immune system is doing its most thorough work of the day. Natural killer cells increase in number during deep sleep. Inflammatory processes that serve repair are given space. The night is not just for the brain. Every system that protects and maintains the body uses the stillness of sleep as its most productive working hours. You are not simply lying still. You are being tended. At every level, from within, the stress that brought you to bed tonight, whatever its shape, whatever it was made of, is not as large as it felt at the beginning of this hour. The cortisol has been declining. The amygdala has been settling in the absence of new alarms. The prefrontal cortex, rested a little more with every breath, is restoring the perspective it was too exhausted to hold earlier. What felt enormous at day's end has a different quality now. Not solved, but smaller against a larger stillness. That is the work of the night. Already beginning. The body, in this moment, is breathing for you, not because you have asked it to, because it knows how. The diaphragm contracts and releases. The chest expands and falls. Oxygen enters. Carbon dioxide departs. This has been happening since the first breath you ever took. It will happen, without your attention, all through the night. You can release the breath entirely to the body that has been breathing it all along. It has never needed your help. It has only ever waited for you to stop watching it so carefully. The sound of a calm voice, steady, and unhurried, has been shown to have measurable autonomic effects, slowing heart rate and increasing parasympathetic tone. Regardless of whether the listener consciously processes the content, the rhythm and tone of speech reach emotional centers of the brain through auditory pathways that operate partly below the threshold of awareness. You have been receiving that signal for the past hour. The nervous system has been listening with more than the mind. Something in the body has been following this pace, this cadence, this particular quality of quiet. So could tonight be different? The science, taken together, says yes. Not because anything dramatic has changed, not because the stresses you carry have been resolved, but because the nervous system has been given what it most needed: information, understanding, and permission. Permission to not solve anything tonight. Permission to release what was never meant to be held through the night. Permission to trust the ancient and patient systems that know exactly what to do with the accumulated experience of a human day. The door to rest has always been there. Tonight, perhaps, it is a little further open. In the deepest cycles of slow-wave sleep, the body enters a state of such thoroughgoing restoration that waking from it feels like surfacing from somewhere far away. This depth is not a sign of weakness. It is the fullest expression of what the sleeping body is capable of. It is where the glymphatic system is most active, where cortisol is at its lowest, where the immune system works most freely, where the healing that the day made necessary is, quietly, being done. This depth is available to you. It is waiting, as it has every night of your life, for the moment you are ready to descend into it. The breathing is slower now. The thoughts are further apart. The space between one idea and the next is growing, widening, becoming restful. This is the quality of the mind at sleep's edge. Not empty, but undemanding. Each thought arriving and passing without catching, without requiring a response. You do not need to hold any of them. They will be there in the morning, smaller, clearer, waiting to be met with a mind that has rested. For now, let them drift. The science of sleep has given us something that goes beyond biology. It has given us permission. Permission to believe that rest is not earned by the resolution of problems, that the body does not need to have finished everything before it is allowed to restore itself, that the night belongs to a different kind of intelligence than the one that runs the day. You are part of that intelligence right now. It knows things that the waking mind has not yet learned to trust. Every nerve in the body that has been carrying the signature of today, the tension, the urgency, the unfinished conversations, is gradually releasing that signature into the night. Not because you have asked it to, because this is what the nervous system does. Given time and stillness, and the slow return of safety, the body does not forget how to let go. It sometimes only needs to be reminded that it is safe to begin. Somewhere across the world, others are lying down in the dark tonight, carrying their own version of what you carried today. The nervous systems of strangers doing the same ancient thing yours is doing, cycling through stress toward rest, through wakefulness toward sleep, through the particular heaviness of a human day toward the deep and patient renewal of the night. You are not alone in this. You have never been alone in this. The night holds everyone. The cortisol has gone quiet. The amygdala has softened. The prefrontal cortex, given rest, is beginning its slow return to clarity. The glymphatic channels are beginning to flow. The slow waves are forming, deepening, moving through a brain that is ready to complete what the day began. Everything the science has described tonight is happening right now, in you, quietly, precisely, without effort. Sleep is not something you achieve. It is something you allow. The body knows how to do this. It is known since before you were born. The deep sleep stages, the memory consolidation, the hormone cycles, the immune activity, none of it requires instruction or effort from the conscious mind. It requires only that the conscious mind step back, grow quiet, and let the older and wiser systems of the body proceed. You are stepping back now. The night is doing its work. Slowly, thoroughly, in the particular darkness of this moment, in the particular quiet that has gathered around you, something is being restored. Not just tonight's weariness, something older, something that needed this stillness, this science, this gentle reminder of what you already carry within you. Rest is not foreign to you. It is native to you. You were built for this. The breathing slows. The body grows heavier. The thoughts arrive softer. The distance between this moment and sleep is narrowing to almost nothing. You are very close now to the place where the day releases completely, where the weight of everything you carried sets itself down with a quiet sound, like a stone placed gently in still water, barely a ripple, and then stillness. Stress is not your enemy. It is information the body has not yet finished processing, and sleep is the most ancient, most intelligent system your nervous system has ever built for processing it. Every night that you rest, the body completes a little more of what the day left open. Not all at once, but continuously, patiently, the way water moves through stone, not forcing, but persiste, and in the end, shaping everything. Tonight is part of that persistence. Tonight is part of you. And so, our quiet journey through the science of stress and sleep comes gently to its close. We traveled from that first fact, that the stress response is not a malfunction, but a system of ancient and precise protection, all the way to the last truth science has to offer tonight, that sleep is not the absence of stress, but the completion of it. We passed through the HPA axis and the amygdala, settling in the dark. We touched the glymphatic channels, flowing more freely with each passing minute of deep rest. Confirmed in human participants just this year, that one night of sleep clears what stress left behind. We learned that the vagus nerve is a thread running from the brainstem to the heart, waiting only for the breath to slow enough to feel it. And perhaps most quietly, most gently, we remembered what the science keeps returning to, that the door to rest was never locked. It only ever needed to be found. Stress reminds us that the body is always oriented towards survival, and sleep reminds us that survival, at its deepest level, requires rest. Much of the restoration we need most happens in silence, in the spaces between thoughts, in the slow tide of the nervous system returning, breath by breath, to its own quiet center. Without the night, there is no morning. Without the rest, there is no readiness. By pausing here, in the science of this, we have already begun. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can. As deep as possible, think about unity, about how every system described tonight, the HPA axis, the vagus nerve, the glymphatic channels, the slow waves of deep sleep, is not separate machinery. It is one conversation, one body, knowing how to care for itself. You are not separate from that conversation. You are the one it is being held inside. Let your entire being dissolve into the quiet that your particular kind of mind has been searching for all day. The stillness that has been waiting beneath the noise, unchanged and patient. Prepare for deep sleep. No boundaries left. Only peace. If this gentle exploration of what stress does in the brain and what sleep quietly undoes helped you feel a little less alone with what you carry, perhaps share it softly with someone else who lies awake more nights than they would like. It may be exactly what another tired mind needed to finally let go. One quiet night, one nervous system at a time. Whatever you've been carrying today, those half-formed thoughts, those moments you keep returning to, you don't need to carry them into sleep. They will still be there in the morning. Tonight, you belong only to yourself. You've traveled inward tonight, through corridors most people never pause to notice. You touched the architecture of how the human nervous system moves between alarm and rest, and found it, somehow, more gentle than it seemed when the day was at its loudest. You can allow these thoughts of stress and sleep to fade now, like the last image of a dream at dawn, present, then softer, then simply part of everything, leaving only the quiet, unheld calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if all you carried today is being sorted by careful, invisible hands, and is simply setting itself down. If sleep comes, let it carry you the way consolidation does, not with force, but with quiet intention, into a realm where time and weight no longer matter. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you, ready to continue the journey. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, the cortisol will rise again, gently. At the right hour, the slow waves will still know how to form, still becoming. But tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, gentle explorer, and remember, your mind is always rewriting toward the light. Good night.